Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. It has been a long time since or feels like a long time since my last live stream. I did put a video out yesterday in preparation for the Singapore Grand Prix. If you haven't watched it, check out the channel. It is basically some interesting facts around the Singapore Grand Prix. And today we obviously had FP1 and FP2, free practice 1 and free practice 2. And we had a Ferrari 1-2 against expectations, if we're being honest, against expectations. And we'll look at what that means and we'll look at the standings of free practice. Obviously, there are no points, there are no positions, etc. For free practice, it is simply that it is just practice. But is this a sign of things to come for the rest of the season? We know Ferrari bought some upgrades last week, 2 weeks ago in Italy, in Monza. And whilst Max Verstappen went on to win, Ferrari was certainly looking more competitive. And this week they've perhaps gone up a little bit, perhaps another level. They got 1-2 in both qualifying sessions. That's a very, very good sign for them. But is it all that clear? Is this Ferrari showing that they can now win races between now and the end of the season? Is this a Red Bull blip? Because Max Verstappen was third in FP1, he was eighth in FP2, and he did struggle. Plenty of communications back and forth between him and the pit lane, struggling particularly for rear end grip. Now, before we get too carried away, it has to be said that this isn't the first and it won't be the last time for Red Bull have led us up a garden path only to destroy us and fade away our hopes and our dreams of someone other than Max Verstappen winning the season. But there were genuine signs that they were struggling there today. Genuine signs. And there were genuine signs that Ferrari could take the fight to Red Bull for the race weekend. There is one small niggly problem with Ferrari, and that is, as we know, as we saw in Monza, as we've seen throughout the season, including last season, to be fair, and that is they struggle with their tyres. They really struggle with their tyres. For example, last week, as soon as their tyres went, Red Bull zoomed straight past them. Yeah, we know it took them a little bit to get past. We know the straight line speed. Ferrari had a very low downforce package, and it gave them some good straight line speed. But without that downforce, your car, you can imagine gliding your hand across, and if you're nice and if you're not pushing down too hard, it just glides across. But if you've done that long enough, what will happen? Your skin will start to erode. You'll get you might end up with blisters and so on. But if you're pushing down a lot more, push down on your hand and push forwards, it doesn't glide as much, but there's more grip. And essentially what the low downforce package does is as the car moves around, it slides along the track because it hasn't got the downforce. It wears away the tires, it wears away the rubber of the tire. And one of the things that Ferrari did last week is they went with a low downforce package, and it did affect their tires. They got a bit more top speeds, particularly on the straights, but at a cost, and that cost were the tires. And ultimately, it's what cost them in the end. They couldn't maintain the pace they had for long enough because the tires eventually just gave way. And I still think that could be an issue over a long run this weekend. Now, is it a long run? It's actually one of the longest, most grueling races on the circuit. It's going to be interesting, but I do have my concerns about how far we're going to be able to manage those tires over 61 grueling, very high intensity laps. We know, like I said, that as we discussed already, they do drop off. So there is, whilst Ferrari have looked good in practice when they're running 25, 26 laps and they're not running those all in one go, just a a side note there, they do run those over, 2, 3, 4 stints. So when, for example, Carlos Sainz completed 26 laps on practice today, they weren't one stint, that was over several stints, so we don't really get to see how well their tyres are managing. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Ferrari, whilst they look quick, and I think they are certainly capable of getting pole, whether they're able to maintain that over 61 grueling laps without their tyres falling off, that remains to be seen, and we'll have to wait and see that. And I suppose we can only live in hope, really, that perhaps this weekend is the weekend where Red Bull finally get beaten. But going on to Red Bull, and we'll look at we'll bring up the times in a minute for both practice sessions. Red Bull have had some issues. They have had some struggle. Let's bring up practice 1 time sessions now. And as you can see in practice 1, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz 1-2. Look at the times: 1:33.5, 1:33.3, 1:33.4. Quite tight, actually. Only half a second between the top 7, and then it drops off a little bit down to Fernando Alonso. But look at the amount of laps completed: 24s, 25s, 26s. Like I said, they haven't completed a huge amount of laps. So they're good on a over 5, 6, 7 laps. A good stint, yeah, they can be quick. That gives us a clue on how they will be for qualifying, but it doesn't tell us about their race pace. It doesn't tell us how are they going to do in terms of tyre degradation and tyre management. And you'll notice Max Verstappen, they're third, 1/10 of a second behind the lead in practice 1. But this is a concern for Red Bull, because a 1:33.4, but if we go to practice 2, and look at the times, they're over a second quicker, the quickest. Look, 1:32.1. That's nearly a second and a half quicker than what they were in FP1. But look at Max Verstappen, 1:32.8. He's only gained barely half a second, while everyone else has gained quite a bit more. That has to be a concern for Red Bull, particularly the fact that even Perez was unable to, we all know how Perez has been on a street circuit. He is able to excel a lot more. Even he has struggled in FP2. So are there genuinely concerns there at Red Bull? Are they genuinely looking at this and thinking, something's not right? Again, until Q3 on Saturday afternoon, I will still hold my breath. To be honest with you, I'll still hold my breath and see what that happens. Another side note to keep an eye on are the McLarens. Now, they brought in some big upgrades to Singapore, but we don't necessarily know how well they're going to perform just yet. Again, we won't know until the race. Lando Norris was 6th with a 1:32.7 in FP2, and in FP1, it was a 1:33.5. So he was just under a second slower in the second section. But when you bought, I think I read somewhere like 16 different upgrade parts, which is quite an extraordinary amount to bring. Not everything is going to work simultaneously. It's not as though you put them all on. Sometimes you've got to play around with it a little bit. Sometimes you're going to put, okay, look, these parts here, we'll leave these on. We'll take these off. We'll put them back on. We'll take these ones off. And you have to play around a little bit and find the right balance. What parts are working, what parts aren't. Now, from my understanding, Oscar is not running the same. He's got some of the upgrades, but not the full upgrade package that Lando Norris has had on his car. And it might be that they looked at it overnight and thought, you know what, these parts aren't working. Let's get these off. And let's go back to last week or 2 weeks ago, the setup from 2 weeks ago, etc. We don't know what they're obviously going to do, McLaren, in that aspect, but they are a team to watch out for, in my opinion. We do know that come qualifying, that's particularly Lando Norris somehow finds that extra bit of speed, and McLaren shows a bit more of their true pace. They do hide a little bit, I find, in practice sometimes as well. Certainly the Red Bulls do. Mercedes, I think the Mercedes are where the Mercedes are. They were 5th and 6th in FP1. In FP2, they were third and fifth. But again, they'll be looking and thinking, okay, if we can, a bit of luck goes our way, retirement or an accident, etc., we can perhaps get a podium. What we do know is that they are better race pace, better long runs than short runs. In sense that they're much better with their tires. They are a higher downforce car. This circuit might not necessarily suit them. I think they'll be looking at Japan and targeting there as a place to try and get podiums. High downforce circuit will suit them a little bit better. Again, as I said previously, the high downforce circuits are where, or the high downforce cars are going to have less tire degradation than the low downforce cars. And the setup here, again, it looks to me like Ferrari have gone with a relatively low downforce setup. And bearing in mind, there is some slight changes to the layout in Singapore. In fact, I will see if I can find the new Singapore layout, but it is. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, Singapore, because there are now 3. Here we go. Let's bring this up here. Here we go. 3. There are now 3 DRS zones: 1, 2, and 3. So zone 1 in sector 1, zone 2 in sector 2, zone 3 in sector 3. Sector 3 will be the interesting one to keep an eye on, and the reason why is sector 2 will be the one to keep an eye on, because with the long straight in sector 2 down this back straight between turn 13 and turn 14, that long straight there with having DRS available there, might not be enough to get the car past, but it'll be enough to get the car close enough that on after turn 14 and into turn 15, that there will be some DRS enablement along the back straight before you get to the home straight. In other words, the extra DRS zone will allow cars who that last year might have struggled to keep within a second before the DRS zone to be able to keep within a second, and therefore be more likely to benefit from the initial or the original DRS zone. If that makes sense. Try not to overcomplicate things there, but you get what I'm trying to say there. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that with the extra DRS zone and the slight track layout, we may be able to see a bit more overtaking this year. It might be a little bit more easier. As mentioned in my previous video, when we look at things such as the race itself, 62 laps it was. I think I said 61. It's 62 laps, 306 kilometers. It is a long race, and it's not just the distance that makes this a long, grueling race. It is, in fact, also the fact that it's in a very high humidity in Singapore. We know the weather, the high temperatures, high humidity. Drivers sweat a lot. They lose about 3 kilos in weight, roughly. Nico Rosberg actually said before this weekend in an interview that he said by 10 laps, you're looking, thinking at 10 laps, and you think, oh, blimey, I'm already done. I'm finished. I can't go any longer after 10 laps. It gives you an idea of the mentality, and winning the Singapore Grand Prix isn't just about being quick. It's an endurance race, the Singapore Grand Prix. It's not about how fast you can do it, per se. It is, but it isn't, if you know what I mean. Stay with me for a minute. It's also about how you can cope with the long distance endurance. For example, like a long distance race, like a 10,000 meter race, Usain Bolt was the fastest man on the planet. But if you put him on a 10,000 meter race, he's not. And so being quick over a single circuit as a driver is all well and good, apart from in the race here, where you can be quick over 1 lap, you could be quick over 10. Can you be quick over 61, 62 laps? That is this what makes the Singapore Grand Prix so unique, I guess, is what you can say. Anyway, that we will be live, by the way, for the qualifying and for the race itself. So do join us for that. We will have live graphics, live timings, I'll also be giving my input into the race as well, live as it happens on the F1 Fan Zone. So please join us for that. The best way, if you wanted to get involved, is to make sure you are subscribed to the channel and click that notification bell. That way you do get notified when we go live, and we'll go live at the time the race is due to start. Normally I try to go live about 5 minutes or so before, maybe a little bit before then, but not too early, so to speak. We're not premature over here. But on that note, let's go on a premature end to the stream. Anyway, I hope you all are keeping well, and we will see you on Saturday for qualifying. See you then.